Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the fascinating science behind how the first year of life forms this absolutely critical window that shapes our lifelong health. Let's just dive right in. We're looking at a period where a baby's body is essentially an open biological canvas, and the strokes we paint during this time, well, they have consequences that can literally last for decades.
So we really have to ask ourselves, what exactly is the biological mechanism that curates our immunity and development right from day one? I mean, it's so easy to think of a newborn's development as just, a matter of genetics. But the reality? Their environment, and specifically their diet, acts as the primary architect of their internal health. It's a real game changer.
To truly understand this, we've got to think of the infant gut microbiota as an unplanted garden. It's this pristine, untouched environment just waiting for the right seeds and fertilizer to arrive. The microscopic organisms that set up shop in this intestinal tract early on, they're the ones that are going to train the infant's immune system, help digest food, and even act like security guards against pathogens.
Okay, our agenda for this explainer is pretty straightforward. First, seeding the infant gut. Second, how diet shapes the microbiome. Third, direct versus expressed milk. Fourth, breast milk's secret weapons. And finally, empowering future health. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Seeding the infant gut. Let's kick things off with a prospective cohort study of 217 healthy Chinese infants at 6 weeks of age. We really want to see what's actually happening out there in the real world when it comes to planting that initial biological garden.
It's incredibly important to ground our research in reality. For instance, the exclusive breastfeeding rate for the first 6 months in China, it's approximately 20%. Now, this is crucial context, because it means formula feeding and mixed feeding are highly common. We aren't just looking at idealized laboratory conditions here, we're looking at the everyday realities of modern parenthood and how those very real choices impact infant biology.
Moving on to Section 2, diet shapes the microbiome. This brings us right to the core of the research. How exactly do these different daily diets alter the microscopic landscape of the infant gut? Like, what actually happens to that unplanted garden depending on the type of nourishment it gets?
It's fascinating when you look at the relative bacterial abundance across breastfed, expressed milk, and formula diets. The distinct, colorful clusters in the data make it so obvious. Different diets literally equal completely different gut ecosystems. You can vividly see how the blue and warm tone blocks group together in entirely different patterns depending solely on what the infant consumes. It's practically night and day.
So let's break down what those distinct clusters actually mean for the baby. Formula feeding introduces a wider variety of bacteria into the gut, so a higher species richness. But breast milk does something completely different. It acts less like a broad scatter of seeds and more like a highly selective bouncer at a club. It curates this very specific, exclusive VIP list of beneficial microbes, specifically dominated by bifidobacterium. Meanwhile, formula-fed infants see an enrichment of different anaerobic organisms, like Veillonella and Enterococcus.
And the real-world consequence of those different ecosystems is super interesting. When comparing the ratios, formula-fed infants end up with a higher combined abundance of potentially opportunistic bacteria, things like Streptococcus and Enterococcus, compared to the highly protective ones. The whole ratio just shifts. Now, to be clear, it's not about good versus bad in strict black and white terms. It's more about the overall balance of the ecosystem shifting from a highly protected, curated state to a much more generalized, diverse one.
All right, Section 3. Direct versus expressed milk. So we clearly see the stark differences between breast milk and formula. But, modern feeding isn't just some binary choice. What actually happens when breast milk is pumped and stored in a bottle?
This is such a fascinating area of the research. The data shows that between direct breastfeeding and expressed milk, the major bacterial building blocks remain incredibly similar. The broad strokes of the ecosystem are totally preserved. However, and this is the cool part, the actual mechanics of pumping, freezing, and storing the milk introduce these tiny little shifts in the minor bacterial populations. For example, researchers noted a slight increase in environmental bacteria like Acinetobacter. It just goes to show that the very process of handling the milk slightly alters its microbial signature, even though the primary benefits completely remain intact.
That brings us to Section 4, breast milk's secret weapons. So, the absolute crucial point here is, why is breast milk such a powerful ecosystem builder even after it's been pumped, frozen, and thawed? Like, what exactly is doing all the heavy lifting in this fluid?
Well, the answer lies in its bioactive components.
Breast milk isn't just food. It is a living biological fluid. It contains this secret toolbox of bioactives that act as fertilizers, security guards, and diplomats for the infant's gut. We're talking about the whole shebang here: human milk oligosaccharides, lactoferrin, lysozymes, cytokines, and specific immunoglobulins like SIGA.
Now, you might be sitting there wondering, what exactly are human milk oligosaccharides, or HMOs for short, and why do they matter so much? Honestly, this is perhaps one of the most incredible biological adaptations we know of.
Check out how this remarkable ecosystem actually builds itself. The mother produces these complex sugars called HMOs. But get this, here's the crazy catch. The baby literally cannot digest them. No way, right? Instead, they are produced specifically to feed the pioneer bacteria down in the gut, like our friend Bifidobacterium. In turn, those beneficial bacteria munch on the HMOs and produce short-chain fatty acids. And it's those fatty acids that ultimately fuel and nourish the infant's intestinal wall. It is just a perfect, evolutionary, cross-feeding ecosystem.
But beyond just providing food for the good guys, breast milk also plays some serious defense. It contains lactoferrin, which basically acts like a microscopic security guard. See, bacteria need iron to grow and multiply. Well, lactoferrin literally binds to the iron in the gut, stealing it right away so the harmful bacteria just starve. And at the exact same time, it can directly attach to the cell walls of pathogens and destroy them. Talk about a multitasker.
And it doesn't even stop there. It also delivers secretory IgA. These are maternal antibodies, and I actually like to think of them as the diplomats of the gut. They don't just act like aggressive soldiers going in guns blazing. Instead, they quietly bind to pathogens and neutralize them without triggering any harmful, energy-draining inflammation. They just coat the bacteria, stopping them from attaching to the infant's intestinal walls. It basically maintains this peaceful, healthy environment while the baby's own immune system is still, waking up.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Empowering Future Health. So, after looking at all this incredible microscopic machinery, from the bacterial clustering to those iron-stealing proteins, what should you actually take away from this explainer today?
First and foremost, revealing all this science doesn't exist to shame anyone's feeding choices. I mean, we saw the data at the beginning, right? A vast majority of families utilize formula or expressed milk. The real goal here is to demystify the biology so we can provide better, evidence-based support for all families. When we actually understand the underlying biological mechanisms, we can make informed decisions, rather than ones based on fear or outside pressure.
And as the research brilliantly concludes, understanding these different baseline ecosystems allows healthcare providers to really anticipate health needs. Think about it. If a pediatrician knows the specific microbial baseline of a formula-fed infant versus a breastfed infant, they can completely personalize their medical care. They can anticipate vulnerabilities ahead of time and tailor their nutritional and medical advice to that specific child's unique biological reality. It's a hugely powerful tool.
So, as we continue to decode the ultimate biological fertilizer that is breast milk, it leaves us with a pretty powerful question. Now that we know exactly how these bioactives and bacteria interact to build human immunity right from day one, how will these discoveries reshape the future of pediatric medicine tomorrow? Could we eventually replicate this incredibly complex ecosystem to ensure every single infant, regardless of how they're fed, gets the exact same biological foundation? It is an absolutely thrilling frontier of science, and I, for one, can't wait to see where it takes us next.